Today I want to talk to you about a Christian artist's or communicator's responsibility when it comes to producing authentic content, especially if that content can be considered sinful by the Bible or even other Christian standards. The question I want to answer today is, what is the responsibility of a Christian communicator? Currently I'm majoring in communications at Evangel University, and recently I participated in a discussion about what a Christian communicator is responsible for when it comes to creating content. In our discussion, we talked about whether or not a Christian could creatively incorporate alcohol, sexuality, or violence in his or her work without offending God. So what is the responsibility of a Christian communicator? Well, if we look at the law, or even the Ten Commandments, the limits seem rigid. So rigid, in fact, it would be impossible for a Christian to tell a story with any authenticity of our fallen world. For example, where do we draw the line on nudity in film? Is a naked shoulder okay? Where does bare flesh become nudity? The answer to this question will be different for everyone. So asking about limits or boundaries results in a strict palette from which a Christian artist or communicator can work. However, in Galatians 5:2, the Apostle Paul wrote that if you accept circumcision, Christ will be of no advantage to you. I testify again to every man who accepts circumcision that he is obligated to keep the whole law. Well, for Paul, this meant keeping all 613 commandments listed in the Torah. So for a fallen human to keep all those commands is impossible. In other words, keeping even one law destroys the advantage of salvation that Christ gives to his followers. Fortunately, Jesus came to fulfill the law. When Jesus died on the cross and rose again, he became our sacrifice that we should never need another sacrifice. His perfect life and sacrifice covers our sin. Other than putting our faith in Christ, there's nothing we can do as Christians to earn Jesus' gift. We could never be blameless enough to deserve what he did for us. So, if we as Christians cannot keep the law, and Christ's sacrifice covers our sin, then can we just do whatever we want without consequence? Again, the Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 10:12, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. So, the answer is no, we can't just do whatever we want. Our freedom may contribute to a weaker Christian stumbling in his faith. So this brings us back to the question, what is the responsibility of a Christian communicator? Lead pastor of North Point Community Church in Atlanta, Georgia, Andy Stanley, he recently preached a sermon series titled Brand New. This series revolved around Jesus coming and bringing with him a brand new way to understand the purpose of the church. Stanley describes the church prior to Jesus as the temple model. Stanley says that the temple model is sacred places with sacred text read by sacred men to sincere followers. However, Jesus brings a brand new model of worship. In Matthew 22:37-40, Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. Stanley went on to say that to worship God and to follow the law in the Jesus model, a Christian must ask, what does love require of me? The answer to that question can aid in the answer to the question I posed earlier, what is the responsibility of a Christian communicator? Jesus said it himself, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So how does this translate to communication? Well, since following a law requires a communicator to follow all the laws, that can't be the answer. And although Jesus gives believers freedom from the law, abusing that freedom at the cost of someone else's salvation is not acceptable either. However, loving your neighbor as yourself means to be creative, encouraging, and truthful. Without creativity, there will be no interest in communication. And the use of encouraging material can point to Jesus as the answer to our fallen behavior. Any fallen examples used in communication should not glorify sin, but show the sin as the destructive force that it is. And honesty comes in the form of communicating that we do live in a fallen world. Some communication requires the element of sin for redemption to take place. The story of David and Bathsheba is just one example from the Bible. While some communication may require examples of our fallen world, it is crucial that we do not exploit those in a fallen position. So, the answer to the question, what is the responsibility of a Christian communicator, is simple. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. While this concept is truly simple, it's challenging to accept and to put into practice. However, if we rely on God to help us, we can succeed in fulfilling His call in our lives. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can email me at mcdo17017@evangel.edu. Thanks very much.